The simplest and fastest way to creating new named ranges can actually be done with the named range box in the upper left of the window. To do so, you simply need to select the range that you want to apply a name to, click within the drop-down, and type the name that you want to give to the range and press enter. Creating simple static names this way is incredibly fast and easy, but it has significant limitations. In the last lesson, I mentioned that you could have two different scopes for a name, a workbook-wide name scope and a specific worksheet scope. Any name created using this quick method will be a workbook-wide name. What does this mean in practice? Well, I have a workbook here with a few different worksheets. On this sheet, I have a column of numbers, and on this sheet, I have a column of letters. If I select a range on this sheet and give it the name My Values, by clicking on the name box and typing it in, the name gets created. Nice and simple. Now if I go to my other sheet and I select the same range, what do you think will happen if I try to name this range My Values? Following the same approach, I'll click on the range box, type in My Values, and press enter. Instead of naming the range I had selected, I'm taken back to that first range that I've already named. Using the name box, the only type of name that you can create is a simple static workbook level name. There's another set of quick static named range creation tools lying within the Formula tab of our ribbon. One of my favorite tools is the Create From Selection command, Alt-MC. This command takes your current selection and allows you to divvy it up into multiple different named ranges based upon values within the cells themselves. For example, on this tab, I have a zname1, a zname2, a pname1, and a pname2, and a t all names split between these cells. If I select this group of cells, that includes the blank cell to the left of t all names, and trigger the Create From Selection command, I get a dialog box. The dialog box asks you to create names from values in the top row, left column, bottom row, and right column. What this box is asking is, where is the name for each row or column combination? In my case, it has pre-selected the top row and left column based upon what my data looks like, and it would be correct this time. What this will do is it will go through the top row of my selection and create a named range using the value in that cell that refers to all of the cells below that cell within my selection. For the T all names value, that means that it would refer to the range D4 through D7. After it does that, it will iterate through the cells in the left column. I should note that the blanks do get skipped, and create a named range for each of the values to the right based upon that value. I have 4 names on the left, so it will create the names zname1 for D4, zname2 for D5, pname1 for D6, and pname2 for D7. With a very simple command, I just created 5 named ranges, which I can now select in my drop-down box or use in formulas. As with the name box approach, each of these names is workbook level in scope. The last name definition command is the Define Name button. Clicking on the Define Name button will bring up a new name dialog box. We will be revisiting this box in significant detail later in this chapter and in other chapters. Within this box, you can assign the name to the range in the name box, choose your scope, such as whether it applies to the whole workbook or to an individual worksheet, and finally add a comment and the range that it refers to. The refers to range will automatically point to whatever cell you had selected when you clicked on the Define Name button, but you can change this manually if you desire. Now, when creating names, you should be aware of some of the other requirements for the name itself. Named ranges have a series of rules to follow when you create them. They must begin with a letter, an underscore, or a backslash. Numbers can be used within the name, however the name cannot begin with a number. As an example, if I try to name this range ToList, I get an error that says I must enter a valid reference. There are some special circumstances for names that cannot be used as well. There's not a length requirement for names, so you can have a name that consists of a single letter. For example, I could call this range Q, but this is about exceptions, right? Well, the letters C and R are both off limits. C and R are special shorthand within the name box for selecting the current column or row. With a slightly different range, if I try to name the range R, I won't even get an error. Instead, the row of the range that I had selected will be selected. If I were to use C, the same thing happens, except now I'm selecting the column instead of the row. The next exception might seem obvious. A name cannot be a cell reference. Now what does that mean? Well, Excel 2016 has up to 1,048,576 rows and up through column XFD. That means that any combination of 1 through 3 letters followed by a number between 1 and 1,048,576 cannot be a name because it already refers to a specific cell. With that in mind, ZZZ1000 would be a valid name since ZZZ is beyond the XFD limit. On the other hand, ABC1000 cannot be a name since it actually refers to a cell within the workbook. Notice that the name box functions nearly identically as the goto box does. The final hard restriction within names is that they cannot contain spaces. If I wanted to name my range Animals at Zoo with spaces, I get an error. The error presented when adding a name this way is not particularly informative, as all it says is, you must enter a valid reference you want to go to, or type a valid name for the selection. This doesn't tell you what is invalid about the name, so you'll have to remember the rules yourself or look them up. Beyond these limitations, named ranges can consist of up to 255 characters and can contain most other characters such as periods, underscores, and question marks. So you could write named ranges and use underscores or periods to represent spaces to make reading easier, or whatever other symbols you like. Named ranges, however, are not case sensitive, so you cannot duplicate a name by changing the case of the letters. My range in all caps is the same range as my range in all lowercase. Your names can be edited and deleted with some limitations within the name manager, which I'll discuss in our next lesson.